Welcome into the 49er Access podcast. My name is Sterling Bennett, and finally, football is back. I just watched the Lions and the Chiefs Week 1 matchup where the Kansas City Chiefs lost 21-20. You can give Kadarius Toney number 19 all you want. He is no Deebo Samuel. But today we are going to discuss the San Francisco 49ers as they travel to the East Coast in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and take on the Pittsburgh Steelers, 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. It's going to be a bloodbath. They called it, or they used to call it Heinz Field. There will be some catch-up on the field, but it'll actually be a little bit of blood. I am expecting a physical defensive battle on Sunday, but let's just bask in the glorious feeling. Football is back. A long off season. We made it. You made it. I made it. For Niner fans, a little more bittersweet, but we are here. It's been a tumultuous, just almost angry, depressing off season for San Francisco 49er fans, knowing what happened at the end of last year against Philadelphia, and the entire off season had, so many different storylines, but we are finally here. We have made it. Week 1 of the NFL season is upon us, and to celebrate the matter, we are going to preview the San Francisco 49ers against the Pittsburgh Steelers, dive into how and really why San Francisco should and could win this game on Sunday, but also what could give them fits, what could give them issues, and what could lead to them potentially losing this game on Sunday against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Want to remind you and ask you kindly to like and subscribe to the podcast either on YouTube or on the audio platforms you're currently listening to me on. Also, use that promo code 49ers Access at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. And without further ado, let's preview Week 1 of the NFL season. Niners versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. And first, the injury report. It's a pretty good one for the San Francisco 49ers, knowing how bad it truly could have been coming into Week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. George Kittle going to be active. He's practiced the last 2 days, going to practice tomorrow, or I guess Friday today when you're hearing and watching this. Jake Moody, he'll be active. Might not be a good thing to a handful of people, but a good thing for a rookie kicker to be healthy for Week 1. Hopefully his performance is up to par with his third-round pick status. Ray McCloud, he looks like he's going to be active on Sunday. A revenge game for Ray McCloud. Broke the wrist a couple weeks ago and has really just surprised us and is able to play on Sunday. Hopefully, it seems to be he's going to be able to be healthy and active come Week 1. Nick Bosa, that's the big one. He's back. He's going to be active, and even if it's a small sample size or a small limited reps, when Nick Bosa's out there, it's a good thing for the San Francisco 49ers. So again, this team get healthy just for Week 1. We are having a healthy Niners team going into the year. But I will say this, an injury did come up today, that being Thursday, September 7th. That does have me a little leery of what could happen on Sunday against the Pittsburgh Steelers offense and Pickens and Deontay Johnson and Pat Freiermuth and even Allen Robinson out there for the black and yellow of the Steelers. Mooney Ward, starting cornerback, came up on the injury report today with a heel injury. He's currently questionable. Didn't practice today. That's a red flag first off. But for some good news to kind of calm the storm, to calm the worry, Kyle Shanahan, head coach of the Niners, and defensive coordinator Steve Wilks both said they expect Mooney Ward to play on Sunday against Pittsburgh. But and that kind of opens our show as to what could happen, what should happen, what could help San Francisco, what could hurt San Francisco on Sunday against Pittsburgh. And we'll start negatively here because we always like to start negatively here on the show. If Mooney Ward cannot play on Sunday against the Pittsburgh Steelers, well, then you're relying on people like Ambry Thomas and Demo Lenore and Isaiah Oliver, which one of those players in Lenore has certainly proven himself thus far in his 3-year career, especially last season being his best. But let's be honest here, if Mooney Ward can't play, you are likely going to see George Pickens lined up against Lenore. And, for all of Lenore's great things he does, George Pickens happens to be the best 50-50 ball catcher in football. There really is nobody else in the NFL like George Pickens when it comes to mossing a defensive back or going up and get it. And if they're going to play 50-50 ball and play three flies up and, whatever else you want to call it, and just tell George Pickens, go up there and get it. Lenore is a smaller defensive back, and if you had to ask me, I would give the edge to Pickens in that case. And even Deontay Johnson, we have no idea who or what Isaiah Oliver is going to be. When you're signed to replace Jimmy Ward, the expectations are you are going to be one of the best nickel cornerbacks, a leader, a ferocious tackler in the running game, and be solid enough in coverage to where you may not cause turnovers, but you're not going to be beaten consistently. And Isaiah Oliver has not been that throughout 3 preseason games. And if he's going to be lined up across Deontay Johnson, who, for all intents and purposes, is one of the better slot receivers in football, that could be a long game for the Niners defense. And that doesn't mean that you don't have Bosa and Hargrave and Armstead lighting it up, and we'll certainly get to those guys. But just focusing on the secondary of San Francisco against Pittsburgh's weapons, if Mooney Ward can't play, again, should play and supposed to play. If he can't play, though, you're relying on a smaller defensive back in Lenore, Isaiah Oliver, who hasn't shown his best work thus far, and even Ambry Thomas, who he had a good enough camp. I think, good enough to make this roster, good enough to, have some confidence instilled in him by Steve Wilks. He is the next man up, mind you, over Samuel Womack. This team only kept 5 cornerbacks, and Ambry Thomas is that 4th guy and that kind of, number 2 outside cornerback if Lenore and Mooney Ward happen to go down. And, even with that being said, even watching him throughout the preseason and training camp and seeing positive things, who is Ambry Thomas still? We don't know. Is he going to be 2021 Ambry Thomas against the Bengals, which was awful? Or is he going to be, in the playoff Ambry Thomas pre-Rams game, during the divisional round against the Cowboys and other teams like that? If he's that style of player, then we're going to be cooking with some oil here and feel pretty good about it. But if he does indeed play on Sunday and is asked to start, he's likely going to be lined up against Allen Robinson, another player who we're familiar with here in San Francisco, being with the Rams last year. He's not been the same player since he was in Chicago. He was taking plays off in Chicago towards the end of his run there and was certainly having a down year last year with the Rams, knowing the injuries they had. But even when they were healthy, he really wasn't a factor in the offense, and he was supposed to be the number 2 receiver to replace Odell Beckham Jr. But if he can get back to his pre-Rams days and taking plays off days in Chicago, he's a solid number 3 contested catch receiver where when you have smaller defensive backs like San Francisco has, that can cause some problems. If Pittsburgh, which this doesn't seem likely, but it's a possibility that if Kenny Pickett finds some pressure and Nick Bosa and Eric Armstead and Javon Hargrave are getting inside to the pocket, he's going to throw up 50-50 balls, and his receivers have a really good chance of bringing those down, especially with smaller defensive backs like San Francisco has. But to be honest here, I am fully expecting a quick game, quick passing game from the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. We're going to see a ton of Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, a lot of quick outs, a lot of quick slants. They want to get the ball out of Kenny Pickett's hands because, well, one, Nick Bosa's back. There's going to be some pressure to be had by the San Francisco 49ers, defensive line. And it's going to be a revenge game for Javon Hargrave, who used to be a Pittsburgh Steeler himself when he began his career in Pittsburgh. So, San Francisco's defense is going to want to attack the Steelers' offense early. And if things do get dicey and Kenny Pickett decides I'm going to throw it up, I just want to keep in mind that, their receivers need to be respected. I know many fans out there, I've seen on Twitter all week long, look at them and just say, whatever. No, they may struggle in certain areas and may not fit our system here in San Francisco, but what they do and what they like to do offensively when it comes to going up and get it and just throw it deep and just figure this thing out, they're pretty good at. Like George Pickens, it would not surprise me if he makes 2 amazing catches in this game. And if this game is tight late, you have to have a big play. Pickens is your man. But again, I expect a very quick game. I don't expect them to be, just throwing it deep every single play. Like Matt Canada does not want to do that here in Pittsburgh or there in Pittsburgh. He wants to make things quick and easy for Kenny Pickett, but that isn't always the case because, well, he stinks as an offensive coordinator. But we'll dive into that a little bit later when we get to the positives as to what San Francisco do or wants to do defensively against this team. But when it comes to Kenny Pickett himself, I think one thing that certainly helps San Francisco is, we've had so much trouble against mobile quarterbacks in our time with Robert Saleh, DeMeco Ryans, and I would assume, or you would like to think that when you're playing Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Mahomes, and others, that you're going to struggle against the mobile quarterback. And Kenny Pickett has those abilities to be a mobile read option quarterback, but Matt Canada does not utilize him that way. Kenny Pickett last year, again, a very fast quarterback. He's not a, Lamar Jackson and other, elite quarterback, Josh Allen type quarterbacks. He's more of a Daniel Jones style of quarterback. And, Daniel Jones was great last year for the Giants when it came to running the read option and led them to the playoffs. Kenny Pickett only had 6 quarterback design runs last year. This is not going to be a read option heavy day for the Steelers. San Francisco is not going to have to prep themselves for a handful of read option plays and, keeping a quarterback spy back and kind of leave someone to, make sure Pickett doesn't run out of the pocket or whatever. He's not a quarterback that's going to, have a game plan designed around his running ability. He is someone that will escape or leave clean pockets at times. So that's certainly something you have to look out for, but it's not like Kenny Pickett is going to, kill you with his legs. He's a fine runner. He can certainly extend plays or, get you a first down with his legs, but he's not going to read option you to death, a la Daniel Jones or Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen. He's not going to be that guy. They are going to want to have a quick passing game. Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, Pickens, Johnson, Robinson, Pat Freiermuth again. But the thing is that with Kenny Pickett, he has a really good offense. And one thing I am worried about is that because Pittsburgh wants to be so quick and really just, 3, 4, 5 step drops, boom, 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 get it to your guys and let them work, is that Steve Wilks is an aggressive defensive mind. One thing that's been noted of him is he loves to blitz, and to a certain point, that's a great thing. Be more aggressive, take more chances, and you can win a game that way. You can get a quarterback down for a sack or, stop a running back in the backfield for a loss of yardage, and that's all well and good, and you can point to it and say, I want to see Hufanga blitz or Oliver blitz out of the slot corner position. That's all great, but Kenny Pickett has been, rather clean when the defenses do blitz against him. Kenny Pickett last year threw 9 picks in 7 touchdowns. But all 9 of those interceptions came against 4-man pressures. So, Jackson or Farrell, Bosa, Armstead, and Hargrave, but none of them came against the blitz. Kenny Pickett is not somebody you are going to have to force pressure. He's not a quarterback you're going to have to, attack and, you see blood in the water and go for the kill early. He is someone who is naturally, being a young quarterback, going to make mistakes, and a rather bland vanilla offense in that Canada scheme. You can kind of sit back and let him make the mistake himself. Now, again, their weapons are really good out there in Pittsburgh, and they shouldn't be, handled with kids' gloves. But Kenny Pickett's not someone you're going to have to be blitzing every couple of plays or, going for the kill, on the first play of the game. He's not like my mind thinks of Tampa Bay last year against San Francisco, where their first couple of plays we're blitzing cornerbacks and safeties trying to attack Brock Purdy and rattle him early. I can see the first play of the game, maybe Steve Wilks testing Kenny Pickett, maybe a Hufanga blitz or an Oliver blitz, or even bringing Dre Greenlaw out of his linebacker position to blitz and try to get the quarterback. But I don't see this being a blitz-heavy day for San Francisco's defense, and the stats and history would show that it shouldn't be a blitz-heavy day for San Francisco. Let Kenny Pickett make his mistakes. He'll do that. He can certainly beat you. Again, he had 5 drives in the preseason. All 5 were touchdowns. So he's been, has a hot streak going, but in the vanilla offense and in a day and age where you'd like to think a second-year quarterback's going to improve, it kind of seems like San Francisco can sit back and say, we're the number 1 defense in football last year. We'll let you fall into our hands and let the game come to us. Kenny Pickett's going to make those mistakes on Sunday, and hopefully it leads to a win for San Francisco. But to give Pittsburgh credit, even if San Francisco doesn't blitz, even if they don't want to bring the Hufangas or whatever it is and try to attack Kenny Pickett early, getting pressure is not going to be easy. They have a rather strong offensive line when it comes to pass blocking, but also they do have really good pass blocking running backs. Najee Harris and Jalen Warren they love to annihilate linebackers and just, finish off a defensive end when he gets back in the backfield. Najee Harris, runner, a rather inconsistent, but he's a good pass catching back. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some, he kind of blocks a running back and kind of dumps off to his right and gets 15 yards through the air. These are good pass catching and pass blocking running backs out there in Pittsburgh. And this is going to be a huge game for San Francisco's run defense. The Pittsburgh Steelers are going to want to run the football. And I would like to think that with Nick Bosa back in the fray, that San Francisco's run defense is going to be better, but this is going to be a big game. And really, we're going to need A-plus performances from Armstead and Hargrave and Kinlaw to support this rushing attack against the Pittsburgh Steelers, because right now I'm staring at Najee Harris being, a top 10, top 12 running back in football. And also Jalen Warren, he's very much Austin Eckler light. He's really good as a pass catcher. Looking back, I think of what James Conner did to our defense in 2021 in the infamous Colt McCoy game. Jalen Warren has that potential to, not be and lead an offense and be an all-pro type player, but he's an undrafted guy. He still wants to prove himself. He took snaps away from Najee Harris last year and really proved to be a really important piece of this offense. And for a young quarterback in Pickett, who, if he does feel pressure, they're going to see Harris and Warren a ton of screen passes and dump offs and checkdowns. And I would not be surprised if we see Warren have about 5-6 catches. And if he finds some open space and, being a smaller, physical and fast guy, like, I would not be surprised if Warren finds himself in the end zone on Sunday. And we have ourselves sitting back saying, why wasn't anybody watching that guy? I'm here to tell you now, you have to watch Jalen Warren, because they're going to want to run the football. And if it has pressure against them or, feels the pressure in the pocket collapse, he is unafraid to give it to his top 2 pass catching running backs out there in Pittsburgh. We already kind of talked about the receivers out there, and, many Steelers fans, if you're actually watching this podcast or listening to it, you're probably saying, what about Pat Freiermuth? And I'm here to tell you that, what about Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw? This does feel like a game where we are very thankful that we have Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, the best linebacking duo in football. Both those guys they take away the middle of the field better than anybody in the NFL. And to know a young quarterback's best friend is a tight end and kind of the check down running backs, two players that can instantly just X out, annihilate, exterminate Freiermuth and the running backs are Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. I would not be surprised if Freiermuth is taken out of this game entirely. It's going to be extremely hard for a rather vanilla, Matt Canada, the offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers, is probably the worst in football, in my opinion. We talked about Cam Latu being a vanilla tight end and nothing special. Matt Canada is the Cam Latu of offensive coordinators. There's nothing special here. Should have been fired last year. And knowing that he's not going to necessarily have an answer when it comes to how do you get Pat Freiermuth going. I really do think that Fred Warner and Greg Greenlaw just kind of X him out of the game plan entirely for what Pittsburgh wants to do. There are some other areas that do worry me. In fact, the biggest one is San Francisco's offensive line against the Pittsburgh Steelers defensive line. This is going to be Brock Purdy's biggest test. Maybe since the Cowboy game would have been the Eagles game, but we know what happened back in the playoffs. But this is going to be Brock Purdy's biggest test since that divisional round game against the Dallas Cowboys. And it's going to be a good assessment of where he is at the early point in the season with his recovery. Supposed to be healthy. He looks healthy, ready to go. But come week one, when live shots when live shots start flying, and you have T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith and Cam Hayward and Larry Ogunjobi and whoever else is over there in Pittsburgh, these guys are going to want to hit you. They want to hurt you. They're coming for blood every single play. And let's be honest here. T.J. Watt, former defensive player of the year football. I mean, he's a freak of nature. He's bendier than Nick Bosa, bendier than Myles Garrett. He can beat you in the passing game when it comes to being a rusher, but he's also great against the run. And more importantly, he can drop back into coverage. And I think, not only is this game going to be a huge, statement game for Colton McKivitz, can he prove to be an improvement or at least be able to survive against a top-tier edge rusher in Watt and Highsmith on the opposite side, but also, he hasn't played against Nick Bosa. Like Nick Bosa not being in camp, and Matt Barrows pointed this out about a month ago. With Nick Bosa not being in camp or preseason, Colton McKivitz really isn't getting tested by an elite edge rusher. And so Colton McKivitz is now kind of being thrown out there, kind of this, go get him, kid, go get him, Tiger. And you hope that Colton McKivitz can hold up. But let's be honest here, if Colton McKivitz struggles, people are going to blame him. But I'm going to sit back and say, yeah, would you expect to happen? And if he plays well, he'll get his flowers, and we'll talk about him here on the show. But anybody, I don't care if you're Lane Johnson of Philadelphia, you're playing against T.J. Watt. I expect you to have a player or two where you say, well, I don't know what really happened there. Oops. And so for Colton McKivitz not being Lane Johnson, I do wonder how San Francisco is going to attack the Pittsburgh Steelers pass rush because, Watt's great and all, and you can point to him and be like, you got to watch that guy. It's not just Alex or T.J. Watt. It's Alex Highsmith too. I'm sure you're asking yourself, who in the heck is Alex Highsmith? Let me tell you. Alex Highsmith last year, double-digit sacks. Him and Watt are probably a top 3 edge rushing duo in the NFL. Everything I said about T.J. Watt being a plus pass rusher, being bendy, being a great run defender, and being able to drop back in coverage, all that applies to Highsmith. But in this case, it's an A-plus player in Watt and a B-plus player in Highsmith. They're very much similar defensive ends. Now, Watt's obviously better, but this is going to be an attack on all fronts when it comes to San Francisco's defensive line San Francisco's offensive line against Pittsburgh's defensive line. And it doesn't stop there. Cam Hayward's one of the best in football when it comes to stopping the run. He's 34 years old, played for a decade plus. He's still an A-plus player out there in Pittsburgh. He's someone you point to and just say he is a Pittsburgh Steeler. He's ingrained in the culture and plays, like I could see him playing for the Steel Curtain a long time ago. Like he's just that kind of player. Then Larry Ogunjobi, who may not play on Sunday due to injury, but he's a solid player. He was signed by the Bears earlier, I believe, this offseason, but failed a physical. Now in Pittsburgh, a definitive steal for them. And so you come into this game, if you're San Francisco, saying, yeah, we got Trent Williams, the best left tackle in football. And you have Aaron Banks and Brendel and Burford, being like second-year starters in the league, and you kind of point to him and say, we hope you take the next step. And you have McKivitz being a first-year starter and your previous backup swing tackle saying, I hope you hold up. And Pittsburgh saying, okay, we have a former defensive player of the year, a double-digit sack total player in Highsmith, Cam Hayward, one of the best run blockers or run defenders in football, and a solid pass rusher as well. And you have Ogunjobi, if he plays, someone you can point to and say he can fill a need and maybe get you a sack. He's the other guy you point to and say, yeah, he's a solid veteran player in the NFL. And so there is some worry that, how is San Francisco going to attack what Pittsburgh wants to do? Like they're going to give San Francisco so many different looks when it comes to coverages. You may think TJ Watt's going 100 miles an hour at Purdy, but in fact, he's backed up covering, I don't know, Christian McCaffrey or George Kittle. He's that good of a player. He can do that kind of thing. And let's be honest here. It's not like Kyle Shanahan can't plan for that. I'm sure he already has the game plan ready to go and installed, and they're looking forward to Sunday to exploit everything I'm talking about. But I want to bring it to attention because Pittsburgh, their fans are saying, we're going to the Super Bowl. That's not going to happen, but this is a young team that has tremendous leadership. They're ready to play. Like this team is going to be prepared. Mike Tomlin's one of the best head coaches in football, has been for a long time. Former champion himself, beat the Cardinals a long time ago against Kurt Warner and Fitzgerald and Bolden. So he knows what it takes to win. Never had a losing season because they win games like this. They beat teams like the San Francisco 49ers. And look, this does to me feel like a very heavy George Kittle game. This really does feel like, a very quick over the middle, and I'm like, look, Shanahan's offense is very, timing based, quick stuff, get it to your stars and have them go. But, this does feel like my mind always goes back to that Rams game back in 2020 it was when Jimmy had the broken ankle, where it was just literally screen pass. And I'm not expecting that, but I will say this, that like Brock Purdy is going to probably be in a game plan where it's going to be, screens to Deebo and end arounds to Deebo and give McCaffrey the ball and check downs left and right. But also, and thankfully, we have a player like George Kittle that is going to make a statement and, I think has a chance to take this game over, which brings us to what I think can and ultimately should lead San Francisco to victory. Despite all the things I'm concerned about, San Francisco still is the San Francisco 49ers. They ultimately, on paper, like personnel-wise, just they're better at every single position, maybe outside of the offensive line and maybe some edge depth and really kicker. And kicker's an unknown, but Chris Boswell is so good out there in Pittsburgh where if it's teed up at 40-plus yards, it's going to go between the uprights. But really, San Francisco has they are favorites at every single position: quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end. The starting defensive line, in my opinion, outside of one of the edge positions, and even linebacker and safety and whatnot. Like San Francisco on paper should win this game, bar none. But I do think that we'll get into Kittle and stuff, but this comes down to coaching, top to bottom. Kyle Shanahan early in the seasons and in past 2 years especially has not had his guys ready to go. Has not had them prepared and ready to play. That's why they've been 3-5 and then 4-4. And sure, there are certain things that happen: quarterback injuries, defensive back problems in 2021. But this team is healthy. This team is ready to go. Your best player's back in the building. There's no excuses now. You are healthy. Nobody's hurt. You have a starting quarterback. All distractions are gone. This team should be full systems go. And again, you're playing a team that has a head coach that is going to have his team ready to go in Mike Tomlin. But this game to me comes down to Kyle Shanahan, the best offensive mind in the NFL. And then you have Matt Canada, the worst offensive mind in the NFL. We know Kyle Shanahan runs this ultra complex offense with motions and screens and reads and is kind of always working a few plays ahead of the defense. We see him set up defenses so well. He's 2, 3, 4 plays ahead of them. We'll see him run a power or an outside zone for 1 yard, knowing it's not going to work because he wants to see how the linebackers move and shift and where the safety's at to exploit them later in the game. And he really is a true mastermind when it comes to dialing up open receivers and making Brock Purdy's job so easy. I don't want to bring up Trey Lance, but every quarterback that's played here minus Trey Lance, Nick Mullins, even Brian Hoyer had his success here in San Francisco for a very small sample size in 2017. Kyle Shanahan makes every quarterback's job 10 times easier. Brandon Aiyuk is going to be open plenty of times in this game, and we'll dive into him in a little bit here. But Kyle Shanahan is so good at finding open space for receivers and dialing them up to give them 10 yards of separation, saying, "Hey, Brock, here's a wide open window. Throw it right here," and just put it there and making it easy for Purdy. And this offense is going to have success against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense on Sunday if they can execute things correctly. But Matt Canada, again, vanilla offensive play caller out there in Pittsburgh. Again, he has weapons too. George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, Najee Harris, Jalen Warren. But he makes an offense that has those weapons, a mobile quarterback in Kenny Pickett, look like it's being run by Rex Grossman with no offensive weapons around him. It looks disgusting. Again, you have a young collective of players that really on any other team on San Francisco would be stars. Then you have Matt Canada drawing up it's almost like he's on the street or in the backyard with your buddies and he's playing, has the football in his hands and saying, all right, go up and to the left. And that's all he can do. It's very much a backyard style football game and not in the Mahomes way, more so in the, run a L route, no creative blocking schemes, not a lot of movement, just go out there and play. It's not complex at all. And if I'm Kyle Shanahan, I'm sitting there saying, do you even belong on the same field as me when it comes to my mind and my intellect of the offenses? Why is Matt Canada still in the NFL and held this offense back in Pittsburgh so much? There's no imagination. There's no setting up defenses. Again, I do not know how he kept his job. People point to, well, they had Mitch Trubisky playing quarterback yet last year. Yeah, that's still Matt Canada was still the reason why this team was bad last year when it came to, their offensive efficiency. He's an awful, awful offensive coordinator. And really, it's going to be hard for me to say that the Steelers offense can even keep up with San Francisco's. Just on paper, not on the actual game on Sunday. This game should be 35-10. It's very hard for me to say that the Steelers offense should put up a lot of points. But again, it is week 1, folks. We just saw the Patrick Mahomes-led Chiefs minus Travis Kelce and Chris Jones lose 21-20 against the Detroit Lions at home. Kadarius Toney being a big reason for that, but we've seen weirder things happen. Last year against Chicago, granted it was a monsoon, I get that, but Deebo Samuel fumbles, Elijah Mitchell gets hurt, things don't go our way, and we're sitting 0-1. Even 2 years ago in Detroit, we had that game tied up and Verrett tears his ACL or Achilles early in that game, and then Detroit kind of fights its way back into the game, and we're sitting there saying all the starters get back in because they were already pooled. Week ones are crazy. Insane things happen, and I would not be surprised, despite on paper, despite me sitting here telling you that Matt Canada sucks and he's a reason they're going to lose this game or whatnot, that Pittsburgh could eke this one out. And I've already talked about why I'm concerned about playing their defense, and if Mooney Ward can't play, and even if Mooney Ward can play, I don't think we should underestimate what the Pittsburgh Steelers can do offensively just based off their weapons. But that does get knocked down because of what Matt Canada is and how he executes the offense. Another reason why I'm confident in this game on Sunday going in San Francisco's favor is our defensive line against their offensive line. They're a solid group. They are really strong at guard with Samalo and Daniels, but I'm looking at their tackles, and this was a big reason. Like, to give you a more in-depth look of how the podcasts work, I was working on my notes and getting ready for this podcast pre-Nick Bosa signing. And all of my notes said, Nick Bosa would help here. This is why you need Nick Bosa on Sunday. You have to get this deal done because of this right here, and that is how bad the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive tackles are. They're just not good. And more importantly, Nick Bosa, reigning defensive player of the year, 18.5 sacks, 98 total pressures last season. He is going to likely be lined up against Dan Moore, who Dan Moore is someone who was brought in, or at least was brought back to be the backup left tackle to Broderick Jones, Pittsburgh's first-round pick. Broderick Jones couldn't win the job. Dan Moore is kind of getting it because Jones couldn't win it. And even Dan Moore last year allowed 7 sacks, the 8th most of any lineman in the NFL last year. And you're telling me it's that player, arguably the 8th worst offensive lineman starting-wise in football, in Dan Moore, against the reigning, defending, undisputed defensive player of the year, who got a massive contract extension. Now, we don't know how much Nick Bosa is going to play. We know he doesn't have a beer belly, mind you, but he's going to play in some capacity. But this is a game where I can point to Nick Bosa having 2 or 3 sacks because of the people he's playing against. Like, he's not going to be playing against Tyrone Smith in Dallas or Lane Johnson in Philadelphia. He is going to play a really bad left tackle in the Pittsburgh Steelers, Dan Moore. But on top of that, like, again, my notes here say Bosa has to be out there. He can change this game and force Pittsburgh to keep Harris and Warren in the backfield, limiting what Matt Canada is already bottom tier coaching can do. And that's, really a true fact here where, if the Niners can find pressure without blitzing, mind you, and Bosa and Hargrave and Jackson and Farrell and Armstead can find their way into the backfield, you are going to force Matt Canada to keep Najee Harris and Jalen Warren in the backfield and kind of limit what they can do in the passing game. If they have to keep one of their offensive weapons in the backfield at all times to make sure Bosa isn't hitting Kenny Pickett every single play or, hitting him every couple plays, that is a huge win for San Francisco, almost kind of taking away the check down or, the threat of a running back like Warren, especially breaking for a huge gain through the air after catching a check down in the backfield. So Nick Bosa is going to be a huge factor in this game. And look, I'm not forgetting Javon Hargrave or Eric Armstead or Clelin Ferrell or Drake Jackson. This is a game where Armstead's job, in my opinion, is to, yes, be a plus run defender and stop Harrison Warren from sitting at tempo, but also really taking up double teams, giving Bosa and Hargrave, and even Hargrave's jobs too, taking up double teams, giving Bosa one-on-ones and giving young players like Drake Jackson and Austin Bryant their one-on-ones to win and, allowing them to pick up stunts. And we talked about this in the breaking news podcast when Nick Bosa signed of this is going to change everything the Niners can do defensively against Pittsburgh. Chris Kocurek loves to have these stunts where Armstead takes up two guys and runs the guard into the center, freeing up Bosa to run around them and getting a sack. And that works for Hargrave as well on the opposite side, where, they're so versatile in what San Francisco can do that Chris Kosar can run stunts for Armstead for Hargrave and for Bosa and Armstead and vice versa. That really, having Nick Bosa out there just changes everything for what this defense can do out there on Sunday against Pittsburgh. And knowing how good the Pittsburgh Steelers guards are, that's a huge deal. Where if Nick Bosa is not going to be out there or wasn't going to be out there, you're sitting back saying, I'm worried about this, that getting pressure is going to be an issue. They have two stout guards, and you're having Hargrave and Armstead take care of them. Okay, that leaves Farrell and Jackson and Bryan and Kerry Hyder to take care of the rest, and I'm not confident in those guys just yet. And so having Nick Bosa back out there is a huge deal for San Francisco, and it frees up people like Hargrave to make a splash. It's his first game against one of his former teams. Go out there and give us a sack, give us a handful of pressures, eat up this offensive line. I think the Niners, they can get to Kenny Pickett. I already talked about how, with four-man rushes and no blitzes, Kenny Pickett's going to give you the ball back. And for a team like the Hazufunga and Warner and Greenlaw, and even players like Lenore and Tashawn Gibson, guys who have a knack for the football, and this is a big game for them. This is a game I'm sure they're sitting back, saying the defense alone can win this game for San Francisco. And again, it's not to say to discredit Pittsburgh. They're going to be a much better team this year. They won 9 games last year for a reason. They avoided a losing season. And Mike Tomlin, again, is going to have these guys ready. But the San Francisco defense, and the more I talk myself into this, I came into this game worried, being week 1 for the San Francisco 49ers. But the more I talk about it, the more I kind of talk myself into it. I came in leaning in Pittsburgh's favor. East Coast game, 10 a.m. game, granted week 1, and but having Nick Bosa back, they have momentum, the good feeling and the good sense you're getting around the San Francisco 49ers, it means something. And I do think, again, going back to what brought me to the positives was that San Francisco's defense being so great and how they can exploit what the Pittsburgh Steelers want to do offensively, but also how good San Francisco's offense is. We already talked about Kyle Shanahan, but George Kittle, I kind of already teased it, but this is going to be a huge, Kittle over the middle game. Looking at the Steelers linebackers, Cole Holcomb, Elandon Roberts, Quan Alexander, and they even have Keanu Neal playing this, safety hybrid linebacker spot. All of them are awful in coverage. Now, Quan Alexander is probably the best one of that group, but we've seen him. He's a little older now, and there's a reason he's been cut from a handful of teams since leaving San Francisco and being traded to the Saints, 2020. But Roberts is someone who is just disgusting in coverage for Pittsburgh. Everywhere he's gone, they've had to cover him or kind of blanket his just really horrid coverage skills. And there's a reason why Quan Alexander is here to do that, but also there's a reason why Keanu Neal is here. And I wouldn't be surprised on passing downs, if it's a 3rd down and 5 or 3rd down and 6, that Roberts is taken off the field in favor of Keanu Neal. And that they do have a kind of a safety hybrid for George Kittle. And, think in a sense of what the Cardinals tried to do with Isaiah Simmons, the George Kittle stopper who's now traded for a 7th round pick to the Giants. Neal is not going to be this George Kittle stopper, but he's a safety that can keep up with him in the passing game. And look, even with all that being said, even with, them bringing Keanu Neal and me saying, well, it could make a difference. It's not like they only have to deal with Kittle. There's Deebo and there's Aiyuk and there's McCaffrey and there's Jawan Jennings. And, then there's George Kittle. And I do think that even if Pittsburgh just says, look, nothing over the middle, we're going to take away George Kittle, which physically they truly can't unless Minkah Fitzpatrick is involved in this somewhere. He's the big X factor here. Their secondary is not great. It's a veteran secondary minus Joey Porter, who weirdly enough, isn't starting on the depth chart for them, which I think is a mistake. But they have a veteran secondary that is slower. They are very smart, and they played probably 15 years between them in the NFL, or 20 plus years between these three guys, and Sullivan and Wallace and Patrick Peterson, who we'll get to him in a second. This is going to be a tough task for the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, who, mind you, is good. Like they're a good unit back there, but I do think that there's almost too much to handle. And knowing that their linebackers already do not have the physical capability to stick with George Kittle unless they bring down Minkah Fitzpatrick, that's going to open up so many holes where for Brock Purdy's physical weaknesses with his arm strength, he can throw it 45 yards. He can throw it 50 yards through the air. And if you're going to have to bring down Minkah Fitzpatrick, you still got to stop Deebo. You still got to stop Aiyuk from going deep past them. And if McLeod is healthy, which he seemingly is, we could see him get a snap or two on a go ball here or there. And I wouldn't be surprised if Minkah Fitzpatrick's playing in the box somewhere or playing closer towards the line of scrimmage as kind of this, weird spy hybrid type player. I wouldn't be surprised if Shanahan takes a shot early and Purdy pulls the trigger on something. This is a defense that you can exploit. And I do think that getting to Patrick Peterson here, they're already chirping, they're already talking. Patrick Peterson today said that, San Francisco's offense has tells in them. And mind you, every offense has tells. And if any offense has tells to fake you out and make you think one thing and do the opposite, it's Kyle Shanahan's offense. So the tells Patrick Peterson is seeing, one makes me laugh. And the fact that he predicted he'd have a pick on Sunday, mind you, that can happen certainly, but I don't think it's going to be because of a tell the offense has, or it's going to be because a mistake is made by Purdy or Aiyuk or, one of the other offensive players out there trying to force something into a hole where it's just not there. But the fact that Patrick Peterson is kind of, he gave San Francisco their flowers, but you can tell that they are going to play an aggressive, like he said himself in the whatever the podcast was called with Bryant McFadden. He said that they are going to want to stop everything coming out of the backfield, all of the short stuff San Francisco wants to do. They have made it a point to come out and just be aggressive in the run defense game and make sure anything in the backfield is stopped early in this game and make a statement against San Francisco's quick end around scheme they like to run early in football games and hit for a chunk play early. Patrick Peterson said they want to aggressively attack those plays, and if they can be good run defenders, they can make a statement and they can make Purdy have to beat them. Hearing that gives me unfortunate Super Bowl flashbacks with Jimmy Garoppolo against the Chiefs, but knowing Brock Purdy has a little more oomph behind him and has a little more weapons around him, a la, Christian McCaffrey and Elijah Mitchell. I don't think anything Patrick Peterson said is wrong, but it does make me laugh because I just saw Brandon Aiyuk for a whole year have the literal most separation for any receiver in the NFL, and that's because he's just so darn good at running routes. Like Patrick Peterson predicting himself to have a pick after 9 games against San Francisco, never having a pick. Like, I get the confidence there, but come on, dude. This isn't the Niners, offense of 2019. It's even better than that. This isn't San Francisco's offense of early last season, which we didn't play Minnesota last year. He's never seen this offense on the field. He pointed to the Eagles game against how they were so aggressive on bubble screens and end arounds and how they were really, this kind of hovering and kind of, storming or swarming were the words he used of, the screen passes and the end arounds and stuff towards the line of scrimmage. I'm sorry, Patrick. Philadelphia was doing that because Brock Purdy literally could not throw the football. They knew he couldn't force it deep, and they were trying to limit what he actually could do physically in from like the second quarter on. So I don't think that's the game to point to. And so for Patrick Peterson, like their secondary this year for Pittsburgh, their starters, Patrick Peterson, an older cornerback who's not as fast as he once was. He used to be amazing. And even Brock Purdy today responded to his words when he said, the Niners offense has tells, I'm going to get a pick. And Brock Purdy said, he's a great player. I used to watch him growing up. We'll see. Like, there's that much confidence oozing from Brock Purdy against this secondary that, Pittsburgh can think, well, we got it in the bag. Like, we got this scheme. We got it. This game plan is dialed up. And San Francisco is like, yeah, watch this. There have been many defenses to think they had San Francisco in the bag. And confidence plays, don't get me wrong. This isn't a knock on Pittsburgh, but they're not the first team to think they had San Francisco in the bag. And then lose by 25, 24. It happens. It happens sometimes. Now, mind you, this is, I believe, the first time since 2019 the Niners and Pittsburgh Steelers have played each other. I believe that was also Minkah Fitzpatrick's first game with the Steelers following his trade from the Miami Dolphins. So a lot has changed in that time. And I believe San Francisco turned the ball over 5 times in that game, ultimately won. But for San Francisco, if you don't turn the ball over, you're going to win. And I don't think Pittsburgh's defense, when it comes to the cornerbacks and the linebackers, have, this knack for the football. It really is Minkah Fitzpatrick and the pressure that can be generated from Watt, Highsmith, and Hayward and Ogunjobi. Like any game, this game is going to be won in the trenches. In San Francisco, it's kind of the flip here, right? Where San Francisco has the advantage over the Steelers' offensive line, and well, the Steelers' defensive line arguably has the advantage over San Francisco's offensive line. So I think we're going to see a low-scoring outing from a 27 to 24 game. This game feels like a game where it's like 17 to 20 or a 14 to 21 outing for San Francisco. Again, I came into this game feeling uncertain, unconfident in what San Francisco can do after reading my notes and talking to you openly and honestly about this game and stating my worries and my concerns. And there's a real possibility, a real outcome here where San Francisco does lose this game. We've seen them start slow and make early mistakes. And, last year I think is kind of the outlier in that, knowing it's Trey Lance, a young quarterback who shouldn't have been starting and, was limited in what he can do physically, and playing in a monsoon also on top of that. There are things that just happen in week ones that make you sit back and say, thank God that's over. It's like in baseball. Like, how many times do you see a team lose 15-2 on opening day, and that team that lost wins 98 games come year's end? Same thing happens in football. You can lose week one. Like the Chiefs tonight are not going to be a subpar team because they literally have Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and hopefully Chris Jones, and they can get that thing worked out. But this is a game for San Francisco. Like, this year is so important to get off to a hot start. And we've talked about, how good Deebo can be. And like, again, the cornerbacks, Peterson and Sullivan and Wallace, they cannot tackle Deebo Samuel. Like Deebo Samuel and Kittle and even Aiyuk, they want to run over all of these people. This game is truly going to come down to who can utilize the quick game the best. And if I had money, it'd be on San Francisco. How do you, null and void an insane Steelers pass rush? Well, quick game. And if the Steelers defense comes to play and they're stopping what you can do offensively, it's not like San Francisco doesn't have the ace in the hole and Christian McCaffrey to sit back and go, what do we do? No, like San Francisco has, like, he's so dynamic. One of my good friends, Chris, at work at 95.7 The Game, the minute we traded for Christian McCaffrey, his first words were, we're going to the Super Bowl. And I said, like, what? Like, that's crazy to say. Like, we're a great team, but we'll see. He goes, no. He's so dynamic. And he truly is. And we saw that at display last year. And so if Pittsburgh's gonna, they want to protect home field, make a statement week 1 against a really good team in San Francisco. But I really do think after talking about this openly and hopefully swaying you and kind of calming your nerves that yes, Pittsburgh does have some advantages here, but San Francisco, just thinking about it, they have the advantage from the offensive mind point of view. And, they have their weapons are better than Pittsburgh's overall. Our quarterback's better than Pittsburgh's. They're the one advantage they could have offensively in their quarterback being the mobile side of him. They don't even utilize it. So that kind of eliminates one thing they can do they're not going to do on Sunday against San Francisco. So I hope you had a good time. I cannot freaking wait for Sunday. I guess I can announce this now, but I'm going to be hosting with Alan Stiles and Mark Grandy the San Francisco 49ers overtime show following Sunday's game against the Steelers, that 95-7 the game. Soon as the game's over, turn your radio on, use the Odyssey app, and tune into myself reacting to hopefully a San Francisco 49ers victory on Sunday over the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is a huge game for us. You don't want to be 3-5. Even I said in my season preview, which I'm already ripping up and tearing up and throwing it away, because I said, I think we're going to lose this game. Now I'm sitting back saying, yeah, it can be tough. It's going to be close. But now I think about it and I talk about it and I go, San Francisco are the better team on paper. They have the better offensive mind. And sure, Pittsburgh is a good team, a young team. They want to come out there and smack us in the mouth and make us bleed and hurt us and burn us and whatever it is. They're going to come out hungry. It's up to San Francisco to stop that at the beginning, to put their light out quick. If we're on offense, score on your first drive, put up 7 points and say, this is how it's going to be every single time. Demoralize them early. And if we're on defense first, and I hope we are, let our number one defense make a statement saying you're mild vanilla freaking Matt Canada-led offense that is literally this freaking wonder bread, like the white bread of the NFL, where if you're playing Madden and you've studied that game, you probably have a more in-depth knowledge of how offenses work in the NFL than Matt Canada does. He's awful. Shut that crap down. Just shut it down. Don't let Kenny Pickett get out of the pocket. I want them to maybe not blitz, but if they can get some pressure early, it is going to limit what the Pittsburgh Steelers can do all day. Mooney Ward being healthy is definitely a big plus. It's not going to lead to 50-50 balls downfield, but look, I'm telling you right now that the more I talk about it, the more confident I am. Maybe it's the joy and just the positive nature of having Nick Bosa back in the building. I've talked for months and months and months, and that's actually a long time, but days and days and days and weeks and weeks and weeks about how it feels like there's this negative vibe over the franchise, and all of that is seemingly just someone took a freaking vacuum and just, and got it out of there. They freaking brought out the Ghostbusters and just they got that ghost out of the room and out of the organization. It feels like there's positive vibes back in Levi Stadium, and I hope as this team travels to Pittsburgh, they feel those positive vibes too. And I hope you do as you listen and watch me on YouTube or the audio podcast, whatever platform you're listening to. I hope you enjoyed this. Week 1's here, folks. Football is back. Niners football, real football is back, and I hope you're enjoying yourself along the ride to week 1. The Chiefs are 0-1. The Lions are 1-0. I hope we are saying the same thing about the San Francisco 49ers. I hope they're 1-0 come Sunday's end, and I hope we're celebrating a victory because that podcast, we're going to pop some champagne if we do win. We're going to have some fun. But again, if you're watching on YouTube or listening on the audio version, please like, subscribe, and leave that review. It definitely helps the show on the podcast charts and also helps the YouTube platform. We have 450 subscribers before this comes out. I want to get to 500 before week 2 of the NFL season, and you can help me do that only on YouTube. Tell your friends, tell your mom, tell your dad, tell your grandma, tell the people you love and your friends you have in your life about this show and say, hey, I know this podcast and I hope you like it too. So I'm having a good time. Plenty of live feeds coming your way, plenty of live streams coming your way. We're talking long 1 hour Niner podcasts still coming your way throughout the entirety of the season. We're at week 1. I'm predicting Niners win. Throw my entire season preview out the window. I'm feeling good right now. Niners win. I'll say 26-20. 26-20. San Francisco wins week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we're celebrating here on the podcast come Sunday night, Monday morning. Have a great weekend. Enjoy week 1 of the NFL season. Again, please like, share, and subscribe. Leave a review. Comment your prediction down below on the YouTube chat and channel. Don't forget to use our promo code 49ers Access at SeatGeek.com. Save yourself some money. Even if you want to go to this game on Sunday and you're in Pittsburgh, you can still use that promo code and save yourself $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek.com. If you want to buy some Niners gear, use our link at Fanatics.com. Support the show and get yourself some gear in the meantime. And also, if you're watching the game, we're watching the game. Follow along with us on Twitter and Instagram at our social media sites. At 49ers.access is the Instagram. 49ers_access is the Twitter. Again, my name is Sterling Bennett saying welcome to week 1 of the NFL season. We made it there, and we are certainly in store for a hopeful, great San Francisco 49ers 2023-2024 campaign. It starts on Sunday. I can't wait for you to come along with us and enjoy the ride next to myself. Whether you're watching or listening, have a great week 1. My name is Sterling Bennett. This has been the 49er Access Podcast. There's my dog shaking his tail, and stay faithful.